It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you...
He said it so calmly, you'd almost miss it. But behind those words lay one of the darkest psychological profiles ever recorded. Tonight we open the doors he kept closed, and what you'll find inside will shock you. What Jeffrey Dahmer was hiding. Real psychology of a monster.
1991, the revelation that he had eaten or otherwise defiled some of his victims revolted the nation.
The neighbors called him quiet, shy, the man upstairs who offered sandwiches. But clinical psychology teaches that monsters rarely roar. They whisper. Dahmer's life was a masterclass in compartmentalization, keeping two selves alive inside one skin. Every good morning, every polite nod strengthened that illusion. And the longer he kept that mask, the more power he felt behind it. And in a few minutes, you'll see how that mask was built from the one emotion he feared most: loneliness.
Addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
Bath, Ohio, 1970s. A bright boy obsessed with biology. His parents fought constantly. The home was a storm of noise and neglect. Psychologists call it insecure attachment. When love feels unpredictable, a child stops reaching for it. Dahmer retreated into observation. Insects, roadkills, bones. That didn't scare him. It was reliable. That's the first psychological fracture, when control feels safer than connection. But isolation alone doesn't make a killer. In a moment, you'll hear the habit that rewired his brain reward system, and it starts with fantasy.
Started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
By adolescent, Dahmer discovered fantasy could replace feelings. Every lonely thought paired with imagined control, and the brain, flooded with dopamine, learned that domination equaled comfort. It's called paraphilic conditioning. When repeated fantasies teaches the mind that power is the pleasure, years of drinking numbed guilt until the boundary between thought and action dissolved. In a few minutes, we'll uncover the brain region that shuts down empathy. The same region Dahmer described as empty. Stay with this. In valid offenders, PET scans reveal low activity in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of empathy and moral reasoning. Dahmer never had that scan, but in his statements matched the pattern. No panic, only compulsion. He said he felt absolutely nothing. That emotionally flatline is what psychologists call affective blunting. Combine that with alcohol-induced disambition, and you get the perfect psychological storm: craving without conscience.
Your Honor, it is over now. This has never been a case of trying to get free. I didn't ever want freedom. Frankly, I wanted death for myself. This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. The doctors have told me about my sickness, and now I have some peace. I know how much harm I have caused. I tried to do the best I could after the arrest to make amends, but no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused.
By day, a factory worker who blended in. By night, a man chasing a fantasy that kept shrinking his sense of reality. This is cognitive compartmentalization, the same process used by spies and soldiers to survive trauma, turned inward for predation. He told investigators, "I created my own world, and that world required obedience, so complete it erased the other person entirely." Coming next, what experts found at the root of that need for total control and how childhood neglect quietly mutuate into obsession. As Dahmer entered adolescence, social rejection deepened. Fantasy became his refugee, a space where he could script connection, control, and permanence. These fantasies weren't about cruelty. They were about never being abandoned.
Anger, about their childhood. It really wasn't a terrible childhood, though. There were a lot of good times. It wasn't a really terrible time.
So pat theories about you as a serial killer striking out to get back at your dad, for instance, don't ring
baloney.
true to you.
No, that has no truth in it. The only motive that there ever was to completely control a person that I found physically attractive, and keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping a part of them.
Did you know before you read this book that your dad had his own obsessions and fantasies, that he had thought about, that he had dreamed of committing murder, that he had had an obsession with fire and with explosives?
No, I don't think that's the type of thing one asks one's dad.
Were you surprised to read that about your dad?
Very surprised. Yeah.
After high school, Dahmer's fantasy met reality. Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker, a conversation, then a decision Dahmer claimed he didn't plan. But psychology tells us fantasy rehearses behavior. Such dramatic and erratic decision-making skills usually stems from impulsive control failure tied to alcohol abuse, or compulsion cycle stemming from loneliness, fantasy, act, guilt, and repeat. Which in this case, both could have affected Jeffrey Dahmer.
He took them home, smashed them all up, and spread the bones in the woods.
Stephen Hicks' parents reported him missing in 1978, but don't hear nothing back till 1991 when Dahmer confessed.
That family had no idea what had happened to their 18-year-old son. He disappeared off the face of the earth. Talk about inflicting pain.
If guilt followed every act, why couldn't he stop? Over 13 years, the line between fantasy and reality vanished. Dahmer sought not through it, but possession. Each victim became part of a ritual to freeze connection in time. And for the psychology part of things, he would use objectification, victims as extensions of self. He would use ritualization, obsessive attempt to preserve control over loss, and lack of empathy. Hallmark of antisocial traits, both emotional awareness. He knew right from wrong.
From our investigation, we feel that this individual strongly is involved in other homicides. We have taken evidence out of the building by the medical examiner to be examined.
Police removed boxes and boxes of body parts, evidence of what appears to be a psychopathic mass murder. Authorities also took out a barrel of what they think is acid. Police are reluctant to reveal exactly how many victims there might be, but knowledgeable investigators say it could be more than a half a dozen. Neighbors say the man was strange and that there was an odor coming from the apartment. However, no one suspected the accumulation of dead bodies.
And the next thing I know, I heard the police open the refrigerator door and they said it was a dead body in there.
Police are questioning the suspect downtown. All we really know about him is that he is 31 years old.
I really don't know much about him. I know he's a single guy and he works every day and he's like stay to himself. And the next thing I know, I heard the police open the refrigerator door and they said it was a dead body in there.
Authorities marched out of the house with boxes of severed body parts. In a barrel wheeled out, a vat of acid. In a refrigerator left as it was found, at least 2 heads, the severed remains of victims of the alleged murderer. This morning, in an unprecedented news conference, the police chief, medical examiner, and district attorney joined in a public statement.
At this point, all we can tell you is that it is a number of homicides, multiples. The investigation is still very dynamic, We don't know whether this individual acted by himself or in consort with other individuals.
The big question now is the identity of the victims, whose heads, hands, and genitals were saved in the apartment. Dentists and doctors have already started the grisly effort. So far, no identities have been determined. And the area's top prosecutor wants other victims who might have survived an encounter to come forward.
We would certainly urge anyone that's had such an experience to step forward. For one reason or another, persons don't do that, or perhaps there's an aspect of their experience that they don't wish to share with the public. However, in this case, I would certainly urge, if there are any individuals who had an experience in this vicinity, we would certainly urge them to contact the police immediately.
And actually handcuffed and threatened with a knife. Through some rather fortuitous circumstances, the individual was able to make his escape from the apartment.
When police returned to arrest the man, there was a struggle, and the uniformed police officers made the horrific discovery: dismembered human remains, decapitated heads in a refrigerator freezer, limbs and male genitals in other containers, and a large barrel full of acid. Experienced homicide detectives say the killings have a sexual component. The male victims allegedly killed by a 31-year-old man, Jeffrey Dahmer, a man with a criminal history of sexual assault of a teenage boy. Yet no one expected the overnight discovery.
The next thing I know, I heard the police open the refrigerator door, and they said it was a dead body in there.
Police have been here all day, pulling any potential evidence from the apartment and retrieving more possible human remains from a dumpster and on the ground behind the apartment. Authorities are assembling a criminal case against Dahmer, and in doing so, the district attorney is asking any potential witnesses or assault victims to come forward.
To Dahmer, love meant possession. He once said, "I couldn't stand to lose them. Once they're gone, I lose part of myself." His murders were not acts of rage, but of desperate ownership. And in psychology terms, this can be seen as abandonment trauma, which is compulsion to control, or possession fantasy, which is ultimate prevention of rejection, or it could be seen as a paradox, a longing for connection expressed through annihilation. What if Dahmer wasn't chasing death, but chasing permanence? Experts disagreed. Was Dahmer a psychopath or a man consumed by obsession? He showed antisocial traits, yet unlike many psychopaths, he felt guilty. He had paraphilic disorders, but not the impulsive chaos of insanity. In psychological terms, you can say he had antisocial personality disorder, which is lack of empathy and manipulation. You can also say he had obsessive compulsive features, where the rituals and the order and the repetition comes in. And you can also say he has paraphilic disorders, which is sexualization of control/death, and emphasize, as well as diagnosis explaining mechanism, not morality. To understand evil is to not excuse it. It's to learn where the humanity can break, and how to stop it from happening again. Next time we continue our exploration inside another mind of darkness.